This is what it feels like sometimes to be a product manager. And some of you, it may resonate with some of you, but when I started doing product management, you get customer requests, stakeholder requests, you have to prioritize, you have to juggle between executing a feature and figuring out the strategy for the next feature. And it can be very overwhelming. What I found out though is sometimes, and you can't do that all the time, sometimes you do get to collaborate with people, and I feel like product management can look a little bit more like this. And today, I want to tell you a little bit about my experience on a recent project that was very much like this, and that's talking about how we all collaborated to have an impact. And one of my colleagues was telling me the other day that it's not so much about collaborating, because most of us are in roles where collaboration is important, but sometimes as a product manager, what makes a difference is being able to assemble a team of talented people who can help you solve a problem. And this is a little bit more about what that is than just pure collaboration. The main takeaways I'm hoping you will get from this presentation are, number one, why collaborating is critical for product managers. Number two, who to collaborate with, why and how and when. And number three, what impactful collaboration looks like. And basically what I'm going to do is walk you through a project that we did and bring it to life for you in terms of who I collaborated with and why it was impactful. Before I get any further, I want to give everyone some background about Meetup, because I don't know that everyone here knows Meetup. The Meetup mission is about empowering personal growth through real human connections. We've been around for 17 years now, and we are creating groups, helping organizers create groups and members join groups to bring communities in real life. We have about 40 million users and over 300,000 organizers. We are in 187 countries around the world. So we've been around, very much mission-driven about bringing people together. You can think about Meetup as a two-sided marketplace. On the one side, you have a type of users who are organizers. These people come to Meetup because they have a vision, they have a dream, they want to create a new community, and they come to Meetup, they create a group, they create events for members to join. On the other side, you have members who come to Meetup because they want maybe a change in their life and they want to do something new and they want to learn something new. So they come to Meetup and join one of the group that's being created by an organizer, or they attend an event created by an organizer. So it's very much like an Airbnb, whereas instead of having travelers and hosts, you have members and organizers. The other thing that's important to know is that we make money from organizers paying subscriptions. So as an organizer, to be able to create a group and create events, you pay a monthly subscription, and that's how we generate money. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because my team specifically is tasked with improving customer retention, improving organizer retention. And the reason why that's important is because, number one, this is aligned with our mission. The more organizer we make successful, the more communities are built around the world, and the more the members are growing through attending those groups. The other reason why it's important is because the more we improve retention, the more money we make. And so for me as a product manager, when we start thinking through our roadmap, we have the lead team that comes to us and say, okay, your goal now is to improve retention by the end of the year by X%. And it's up to you as a product manager and with the rest of the team to figure out how you're going to come up with a roadmap that's going to be impacting that metric and achieving that goal. And the other thing I wanted to call out here is that when you're thinking about product strategy, the the main differentiation between being a project manager who's focused on executing a project and a product manager is very often time being able to define the product strategy. And a very important part of the product strategy is being able to frame a problem. That's very much what, if you think in terms of skill set, that's a very important skill that's going to make you stand out and make you be able to move away from execution and thinking more about strategy and crafting solutions that are going to tackle this problem. So as a product manager, when I'm thinking about improving retention, I'm thinking about how are we going to identify an opportunity and figure out how to frame the problem so that the solution will be delivering against this problem. So I'm going to tell you the story about this project, and I'm going to introduce people I worked with along the way so you get a feel of those different people. This is Daria. Daria is in our community experience team. Community experience team is the team that's dealing with our organizers day in, day out. They're constantly helping them fix problems, troubleshoot issues, respond to their questions, respond to their feedback. They're not just a client service team. They're very much part of the product strategy process where they are not only surfacing bugs and issues and usability problems from the platform, but they're also helping us identify new feature requests. So when I spoke to Daria and I said, hey, we need to figure out how we're going to improve retention, can you help me out, think through, like, can you give me some insights about how we could think about improving retention? She could tell me a lot about the different organizer problems. And there are a few, and there's a lot that we can choose from. But the one that was brought up was that being a meetup organizer can be too difficult. And after a while, they lose motivation and they lose interest in doing the group. So you can think about organizing as a user journey where you first create your group, you're very excited, you're very motivated, and you're kind of willing to go through the hurdle. You're willing to go through putting the time and effort to build your community. But after a while, you may have a full-time job, you may have another interest, and after a while, you just kind of lose motivation. So we kind of decided to focus on that problem, and it's not a simple problem to solve. So as a product manager, I was kind of left like, okay, now I need to figure out how I'm going to break down this problem, and that's not an easy task for me to do. So I started to think, talking to a lot of colleagues, started to think about how we could reframe the problem a little bit. And one thing that came to mind was this idea that somewhere there's a way we can match an organizer problem and a member problem. In this instance, the organizer problem is that sometimes they get too busy and they don't have time or motivation to run the group. On the other side of the equation, some members, when they join a group, they join it with more intention than just sitting there and attending communities. They actually, maybe they wanted to start this group, but it already existed. So they just joined the group that existed. So the idea is, how do we make it possible for these two problems to reconcile, and how do we get members to maybe help organizers? So what we did is we started to refine what the potential opportunity could be. In this case, our hypothesis is that there was an opportunity to make it easier for organizers to crowdsource help from their members and for members to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to participate in the community. Some context here about Meetup is that groups don't have just one single organizer, but they can have multiple organizers. And typically, one organizer is going to start their group, but then they can reach out to you and ask you to be a co-organizer. And so we felt like there was something there where perhaps if we make people become co-organizer, then the organizer is going to feel more supported and they're more likely going to retain. What I also knew was that that was a very big problem for me to tackle alone as a product manager. And so I decided to assemble and find some smart brains at Meetup and help me figure out how we could solve that problem. So this is the team who I assembled. Kelly is right here in the room. This is the team that we assembled to help solve that problem. So I work with many other people. I don't even have engineers portrayed here, but these are some of the people I work with the most closely in my day-to-day on the design, content strategy, business strategy, and user research teams. So we decided that there was a big opportunity and we're going to kick off a research project initiative. And the objective of the project were, number one, confirm that there is indeed a business opportunity, because we don't want to spend time trying to solve a problem that's not going to move any needle on the business side. Number two, we want to confirm that there's a real user problem. Do organizers feel like they actually need help to run their group, or maybe they don't? Number three, how do we identify some insights to frame the problems, to frame the solution? Because we need to be making product decisions that are informed, and so we need a lot of insights to be able to guide us through how we're going to think through solving the problem. This is Alex. Alex is from the business strategy team, and she was part of the team we assembled. Alex is not someone who's just, she's helping us get quantitative insight from the data so we can actually make better informed decisions. And she helps with crafting data analysis and experiments so that we can really get smarter about how our user currently use the product and how we can, one solution can be better than another. She's not just someone who sits there and pulls data on request. She's very much someone who's part of the team, helping us think through the business strategy from a business standpoint and from a user standpoint. So the first thing Alex did, she started to look at the data. This is one example of a graph that came out of her analysis. What this graph is showing you is different group size based on the number of organizers they have in the group. So this is a group that has only one organizer, and this is a group that has 20 organizers. And for each of those groups, she looked at how many successful events they had in average. And you could see here that typically the more the group had organizers, the more likely they were going to have successful events. And we define successful event based on how many people attend the event. So I was like, this is great, Alex. I feel like we've got a real case for pursuing this project. Clearly, we can tell that if we just get more co-organizers, we're going to create more successful events. And Alex was quick to tell me, no, this is correlation. That doesn't mean it's causation. And she was explaining to me that perhaps there's other factors that come into the picture that make it likely that a group that has co-organizer also has successful events. And so we argued about that because I wanted to hear what I wanted to hear, and she wasn't going to let me have it. And so after a while, I was like, fine, okay, there's correlation, not causation. So I was like, what do we do now? And Alex was like, well, we need to see if we can have more like qualitative insight, and maybe that can help us define whether there's causation. So we went to speak to Kaylee, who's leading our user research team. User research is also very important for me as a product manager because it's basically the voice of the customer. Kaylee spends her days speaking to our organizers, trying to understand their behavior, their motivation, and really surfacing qualitative insights that will then help me as a product manager make informed decisions. It's not someone who just spends time doing usability testing of prototype. It's much more like a strategic partner in crafting the story from a user standpoint and making sure that our solutions are actually solving user problems. So we spent a bit of time doing user research, and we spoke to a lot of organizers. We focused on organizers who had really big leadership team in their groups. And simplifying the quotes, some organizers were explaining how since they had a lot of organizers in their group, they not only had more events, but they also had more variety of events. And that was new to us because the data was kind of showing us that the more organizers you have, the more events you have, but we hadn't actually thought that, oh, organizer A and organizer B will organize two different events that are matching their own personality and interest, and that's benefiting the members who are now being able to see and experience different events. So that was great, and I was like, oh, this is it. We have our evidence. Now we can say there's causation. And Kelly was like, no, 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 no. This is qualitative insight that helps give us a sense of direction in the causality of the data, but that's not a proof and an evidence that this is causation. We still argued. We had to write a report, and I was kind of trying to include the word causality in the report. She wasn't going to let me have it, so we had to like put disclaimers. But we were on the right track that there was definitely something there worth pursuing. Went back to Alex from the business strategy team. She was still doing the data analysis, and she was trying to help us understand what is the size of the opportunity. What she uncovered was that 60% of the groups didn't have any co-organizer. So for us, that was great news. It meant that there was a huge opportunity. We could really try to address the 60% of the groups and try to get those groups to have more co-organizers so that they could be more successful. But we were wondering why those 60% of organizers are doing it alone, and why don't they have co-organizers? So we spoke to organizers who were doing it solo and tried to understand a little bit their perspective. We find out that there were roughly three different categories of organizers from that perspective. Number one, there's the boss, and that's the organizer who they have their vision, they want to be in control, the group is their brand, the group is their reflective of their personality, what they want to achieve, and they don't want to share that with anyone. And that's totally understandable because it's so precious to them. So those people are not going to be super interested in getting co-organizers. The second group is the delegator, and that person still has the vision. They don't want to share the vision. That's very much theirs, but they're willing to start delegating to other people to help run the community. And finally, there's the team builder who is very happy to share, think through the vision, think through what the group is about with other people and get them to organize. And it's very much, a team builder. And so that very much helped us understand, okay, there are some organizers, some users that we can target, some that for which it's not going to be relevant. What it also helped us understand is that there was an opportunity we hadn't actually thought about. This is reflecting the type of organizers you can be on Meetup. Typically at the very top, you have the organizer. They're the one who started the group. And then they can make any members either a co-organizer, an assistant organizer, or an event organizer. If you're sitting here wondering, what are those roles? That's normal because it's not very clear. And you can imagine that for an organizer, if they see that, it's not very clear to them what it does. What it means on the product is that you get different levels of access. So the event organizer can schedule events, but that's all. The assistant organizer has a little bit more power to maybe manage some of the money and so forth, but that's all. The co-organizer has about the same kind of level of access on the group as the organizer. So there's different roles, different permissions, different access. What we find out was from talking to those organizers who had co-organizers was that they were really tapping into the event organizer role. And that's because they realized it was very low key. It didn't have a lot of implication. It was going to help them schedule events, but they were not going to be taken away from their baby, from their brand. And so that was very compelling for them. And at Meetup, we hadn't really thought about this from that perspective. So it was really eye-opening that this was a role that we could tap into. So once we had uncovered all that, we wanted to start thinking about, okay, now we have a better sense of the problem. How are we going to shape a solution? And this is where Chris, who's our content strategy lead, kind of came in the picture. And Chris is also a very important partner to me. I actually didn't know what a content strategist was until recently, and quite frankly, until I worked with Chris. For the longest time, I thought that these people were very much focused on copywriting. But what I found out is that someone like Chris is really thinking about the user problem from how is the user going to react to something that we offer to them? How are they when is the right time to surface a flow? When is the best way to surface a prompt? So very much, much more psychologically deeper analysis than just pure content and copy. And as a result, Chris is also very much one of my partner in crimes. I go to her all the time to think through user problems, and I use her as a sounding board for my solution just to make sure that they make sense from a user standpoint. So Chris and the team started to think about, okay, as we craft a solution, what are the principles that we're really going to focus on? And based on our insights, we realized that it was critical to have clarity and awareness so that those roles that I was just describing to you actually make sense and resonate with people and it's not confusing. Make sure that we make users aware of the roles, because we find out that a lot of organizers had no idea that those roles even existed in the first place. How do we very much focus on what's low bar, easy? In this case, how do we focus on the event organizer role and not the co-organizer role? And finally, something that's very important is how do we, it's really awkward to go to someone and say, hey, do you want to be my co-organizer? And it's really awkward for a member to say, hey, I'm really interested in helping you run your baby. It's just like, it's like asking someone on a date. It's really weird. So we thought it was critical to make sure that the product was going to help you give permission and say, hey, this is someone you may want to ask to be an event organizer. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, the product asked me, so it doesn't feel like I'm making this up to ask someone. How do we provide context so that when you do ask someone to be your event organizer, you already know a little bit about them and it's not too awkward. And finally, how do we do the job as a product to prompt this interaction? This is John. John is like another partner in crime of mine. I really think about John as my co-founder. We work together closely on virtually everything, and our skills very much overlap. John is a designer, but he's not someone I just go to and say, here are the product requirements, please make some nice screens for me. It's not like that at all. John is very much involved through the entire process that I just described, and he's very much helping think through user problems, user flows, and solutions from the standpoint of a user. So very important partnership for products. John, this is a conceptual idea that we started to look into to solve the problem that I described earlier. We realized that it was important for you as an organizer to surface your regulars, because what we find out during the interviews and talking to organizers was that they didn't want to ask anyone to be a co-organizer. They wanted to ask someone they've seen at a meetup before. They wanted to ask someone that they know. And so we as a product could actually do a good job at surfacing to you, these are the people who come to your events a lot. Part of the solution was also to prompt the organizer to contact those regulars. And so just so they don't start from scratch, let's make sure that we also give you an idea about how you might want to ask someone to be an event organizer. So here, this is a very conceptual design that shows how we surface to you, an organizer, the different members that are your regulars, and we prompt you. We say, hey, are you looking for someone else to host your next event? Contact those people. And here, the idea is that when you contact them, there's some text that you don't have to start from scratch, and there's a template that you can use to actually initiate the conversation. So what we ended up having to do was also presenting to some of our senior leaders in the company where we were at in this analysis. And I remember us being very nervous because we spent a lot of time and emotions and going through the detective work to find out about those insights and try to come up with a proposal about a solution. But what ended up happening was that we were so well equipped with insights and recommendation, and we could very much articulate how to frame the problem so well that the presentation went really well. And here was really interesting was to contrast where her head was at when we first started to think about this problem versus what we were thinking at the end of the research project. At the beginning, we thought we could surface any kind of organizers to you, or sorry, any kind of members to you and prompt them to become co-organizers. But after we realized that this event organizer was a very much more compelling role to surface to you as a user, we thought we had a one-size-fits-all kind of approach, but at the end of the project, we realized that no, we can't surface that to the boss. It has to be the team builder and the delegator. So these were some examples of things that were very different from when we first started, and we felt like we really helped change the way the company think about this problem, and now we can have a lot of people rallied behind this problem, the opportunity, and how to solve it in a very elegant and impactful way. So that's the main takeaway. So yeah, I think for me, that as a product manager, sometimes you have to do it alone. You have to be scrappy. You have to execute quickly, and you don't always have the luxury of assembling a team and trying to think through how to frame a problem. But when you can, it's so critical and so impactful to actually do it that way so that you can really start crafting solutions that are impactful. And I think that's it.